Hello and welcome to Make It Work, the bi-weekly podcast where we uncover inspiring stories of modern working mamas in Asia who have redefined their career paths whilst putting family first.
Hi, I'm Sarah Wong and welcome to the second interview of our special coaching and counselor series. Today, my guest is Vandana Ahuja. Originally from India, Vandana has now called Singapore home for over 6 years. She has been a human resources leader in corporate teams for 3 decades and is also a certified executive coach. In our conversation today, we tap into Vandana's professional experience to learn how HR policies for dual working families have evolved. She also spills some coaching secrets that she employs with her clients, many of whom are working moms. So come join us for some practical tips on how to make it work. Hello and welcome, Vandana.
Thank you, Sarah. Wonderful to see you again. How are you?
Very well. I'm so thrilled to have you here. Let's have you share yourself and your story in less than 2 minutes, if possible.
Firstly, thanks for having me here. I'm so happy to join you over this conversation. So, thanks for the introduction as Vandana. As an ICF accredited executive coach and an HR and organizational advisor, I am the founder of Metamorph Dynamics Consulting, a company that specializes in HR consulting and executive and organizational coaching. Within this organization, I'm blending my over 3 decades of corporate HR leadership experience, including working in Fortune 500 companies across 5 markets, specializing in delivering HR proficiency and amplifying HR outcomes for clients, fostering sustainable, scalable HR solutions. In my coaching practice, I cultivate self awareness, resilience amongst leaders, creating harmonious alignment simultaneously within executive leadership teams that catalyzes organizational growth. And I am passionate about empowering emerging talents to progress to their next career stage. So, in all, it's all about helping my clients attain enduring growth, be it in their personal or professional space.
And what about your personal life?
On the personal side, I have a son. Our son is now a graduate from SMU Singapore and has started his first job. My husband works with a medtech company as the VP of the business for the APAC region. And that really forms our family here in Singapore.
All right. Thank you, Vandana, for that great introduction. Can you tell us a little bit on what a day in your life looks like?
Oh, that's wonderful because every day is a thrilling juggling act. I think I'm more like a coach sometimes on and off the field, making sure I'm steering my clients towards their goals while also ensuring I score quality family time as a goal for myself every day. But it's interesting, Sarah. How about you? What's your secret to mastering the day?
Well, I think I try to make sure I have a list of priorities, maybe top 3, and make sure I hit them so I get a sense of satisfaction at the end of the day. But yeah, it's tough, especially with young kids, as I have 2 kids under 3 right now. All right, Vandana, if you could share some of the biggest challenges you face whilst juggling work and family and how you overcame them.
Absolutely. So I think as starting with as a young parent, like many of us, my most significant challenge revolved around managing time, balancing a full-time career, and being there for my family, especially as we welcomed our newborn son and witnessed his wonderful growing up years. The long commutes, especially to my places of work, almost 3 to 4 hours a day, added to that time crunch that I had to deal with. What worked for me certainly was I think I had strong resilience that moved me forward. And along with that, there has always been that unwavering pillar of support that I found in my husband and my parents that kept me going, kept me motivated.
Right. And to be sure, you spent your early career years not in Singapore, but where were you?
I was working for a large part of my career based in India, and I worked across Delhi and Mumbai metro cities that bring in their own perils and challenges that come along as a working professional.
I'm sure, well, I can't imagine commuting 3 to 4 hours a day. That's going to, KL or something like that. If I'm thinking of a flight from Singapore, that's just, yeah, a different world to me.
Yeah.
Well, but now that you've seen, HR policies in the past 3 decades, like you've shared, could you share, some broad strokes? How have they evolved to accommodate dual working families from your time to, now?
Gladly share that. And I think I'm so happy to see the way there's been the significant transition in HR policies, which essentially foster practices that promote work-life balance that can support dual working families in a big way. So amongst a few things that are pretty noticeable, and I guess you and other people might notice as well, is um, things like flexible work arrangements. Many more organizations are now able to offer flexible working hours, telecommuting options, or even compressed work weeks, which essentially can allow employees to better manage their work schedules and family commitments. Next, let's move on to parental leave policies. There's been a noticeable increase in paid leaves, whether it's maternity, paternity, and even adoption leaves. For instance, let's take an example. You referred to my experience in India, and to share with you, at the time that I became a mom, maternity was only about 3 months. However, over these years and more now, is 6 months of paid leave that has been mandated by the government in India itself. So apart from those, support for childcare, whether it's on site in certain organizations or in a larger way, a focus now for companies and HR moving more and more towards employee wellness, talking about offering mental health, stress management workshops, initiatives to reduce burnout, essentially helping people manage that part of the work and the life at the workplace and beyond. And I think overarching it is the growing endeavor of HR moving towards promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, ensuring all employees, which includes dual working parents, to have equal opportunities for advancement and support. So, broadly, those 5 areas, I suppose, sum up the changes that progressively have happened over these past years.
So maybe taking a little bit of a change in the lens from an employer perspective, what have you observed as employees have evolved, from millennial to now Gen Z? What are the biggest changes you observe in employees who've just become parents?
I think something that stays steadfast and continues and improves is how employees, as young parents, suddenly become superhumans, multitasking everywhere. It could be from changing diapers to replying to emails to putting children to bed with lullabies, all the while running on sometimes minimal sleep. So that's something that I suppose is a common thread that I've observed with young parents, irrespective of which gen they come from. So it might just be nice to think about parenthood as a state where a working parent becomes a master of multitasking.
Mm. That's a really good way of putting it there. We've suddenly become superheroes. And I've read studies where they talk about working parents actually being much more productive than, when they weren't parents before, because of them being able to handle and deal with so many demands. And it's something that in a way is unleashed, I think, by necessity. So yeah, that's an interesting common phenomenon that you see. Any kind of differences at all?
One, I think that comes to mind is with the growing number of options for careers today, there's a lot more that young parents have as opportunities for themselves vis-a-vis if I went back to my time, and I'm going back over 2 decades ago, there are options of just doing your 9 to 5 and beyond jobs. But today the workplace has evolved so much, opportunities and the business world has grown so much. There's so much more that young parents can choose from should they want to.
Are you able to share some examples that you see of how some companies have implemented interesting policies or models, or if you have clients who've taken up, like you said, these alternative modes of working, perhaps? Yeah, I think that'd be really helpful for some of us who listen out there and are wondering, what else could there be besides 9 to 5?
Mhm. Uh, so it's sometimes, I think it's a blend actually between what the employer can offer and what really exists in the wider market. So for a young parent today, there is an option to even look at their own interests that could be developed into a career. So let me take, for example, having an employee who became a young parent and juggled with work at office and managing her parental and personal responsibilities till she decided that she needed to take a step back and pivot towards nurturing her interest in painting and building that up as a career that she could take on while she managed her young family. So that's been something that I have witnessed very closely. On the side of employers, there are return to work programs where there can be a bit of hand holding when a parent is returning to work to help make themselves comfortable in the environment and assimilate with work back from their leave. I think one of
Mm,
the other live examples that I can also share is flexible working has certainly been available. I have advocated for it ever since the early 2000s, where working with a PR firm, we realized a large proportion of our exiting talent was young mothers, only
mm,
because the work was pretty demanding and it stretched beyond work hours mostly.
mm,
So we kind of relooked our numbers, our data, to just try and see what we could do, and coming up with just offering a flexible working policy for young parents. We were able to improve our retention, especially in the women workforce, which retained this high potential talent that we were at the risk of losing if we did not take that progressive leave. So, the point I'm making is that we've got to think ahead as companies to say what are the needs of our talent and how we can retain them. And at the same time, today, there is this opportunity for the workforce to think about careers that make sense while they might be in a stage and a phase of juggling home and work.
mm. And also, you also shared before when I met you about maybe like a mentor programs. Yeah, if I recall correctly, if you've seen something that would love to hear a bit more, maybe a bit more details if you have.
Sure, absolutely. So yes, you're right, Sarah. The flexible working at that time that I'm talking about is, giving people the flexibility to pick up their working hours. So, for instance, when I worked with the PR industry, it's a highly demanding work industry. Your work is driven entirely by clients, and it runs into long evenings. So most of us would be stretching our work hours. So we
Mhm.
kind of gave flexibility to our workforce to say, you don't have to come into office every day. You could choose to work from home on days, but lock in your time. So we came up with this system which would allow people to lock in their time in and time out in discussion with their managers. So you kind of build a soft kind of a boundary around it that makes
Sure.
ease of communication within the organization to the relevant stakeholders, which means your manager, your peers, everybody being aware. So it's transparent, it's open, it's available. So you've got to
Mm.
enable with technology or with processes to say, okay, these are some kind of frameworks within which we can enable our employees to work with flexibility. To the other point, I think there's now more an increasing number of companies that are looking to support employees with mentors on the job, or more so sometimes with coaches, because as young parents, you're kind of dealing with a lot. And
Mm.
you really need to find that third listening ear that's dispassionate or not involved in that situation. So it may just have to be stepping out of the organizational sphere and saying who could be a trusted listener. And that's where sometimes organizations rely and lean on coaches to say, okay, here's some good talent, here's somebody that needs help. Can we look at providing them a coaching help, somebody who's going to listen and help them find those solutions?
I think it's very interesting that there are actual examples of companies that are offering coaching and even outside of the organization support for employees, because sometimes you just feel as an employee, and I've been there, unequipped or not so sure how in a way vulnerable I should be with my manager who is may or may not be a working parent or a working mom. And there's a lot of self-censoring that I put on myself, not wanting to sound overwhelmed because I didn't want, come across as unable to handle the work. But being a young parent is overwhelming.
That is, I think, the apt word. You just said that, overwhelming.
Yeah. So maybe if you could put on your coaching hat for a while, Vandana, what are some of the common questions you face as you talk to working mothers and your clients going, transitioning back into the workforce or juggling as they
Sure.
work?
So, as a coach, Sarah, to working executives, and that includes working moms, right? The most
Mhm.
common questions and concerns I often encounter revolve around balancing career and family life, managing stress, navigating career progression while raising children.
Mm.
So, let me touch upon maybe just some specific questions might resonate with some of our listeners. Balancing career and family, for instance, very often people would come by to ask, how can I better balance my career, which is fairly demanding, with my increasing family responsibilities? So that's something that people, I suppose, face most commonly. And it's by setting up priorities, deciding your boundaries, and considering flexible options where available, and really not hesitating from delegating and seeking support where you need. So, those are some things that I would wish for many more of us to consider before we start struggling with that situation. Another common question that I encounter is, I often feel overwhelmed and stressed. How can I manage my stress effectively? And I think there's so much written, there's so much we read these days.
Mhm.
It's going back to the basics of saying it starts with self care, setting up aside some me time for yourself and establishing a support network. It could be within the organization, it could go beyond your family, it could be with somebody outside who, by listening, by supporting you, giving you some ideas or from their experience, can really be part of that network for you. The other is, of course, the sense of guilt when it comes to self care that parents might have, as they continue to balance work, personal life, priorities. And again, having self care is not being selfish. That's the first thing that I would say. It's necessary, firstly, for your own well being, that you need to be well and take care of yourself so you can take good care of your family and deliver what you want to on your professional side as self. And really, in wrapping very closely, it's reaching out and managing that time. There's only those many hours. While young parents can be superhumans, they still work within the framework of the 24 hours. So prioritize what's important, relevant, stay determined, and then seek out support. That's what I would generally find as questions, and how most people find answers when they're going through those.
I would like to dig a little bit deeper, if you will. As a coach, what are some techniques you do, or you can think many examples where you've helped your clients maybe uncover ways to do that? Because I feel like, self-help, self-care and being determined, finding support, it are things that we know in our heads, right? That these are the right things. But why do people not do that? And how do you as a coach help your clients see that and maybe take up practical steps towards those?
So you're asking me to give away my secrets.
That's why we're here. Vandana.
Absolutely. For you, sure. So
Just a few.
yeah, of course. It is, if these are helpful, for sure. It starts with, firstly, taking time out and saying, what am I trying to achieve? And tell me, let's look within ourselves to say, how many times do we pause in our daily lives, or even in a month, to sit down and say, where am I? What am I trying to do? And what do I really want to do? What's going to help me get there? Unless you're pushed into this sitting across face to face with somebody who's asking you that and who's helping you navigate
Mm.
those questions that you have in mind. That's what I do as a coach, right? So that's broadly what it covers. Now, techniques, as you pointed out, those could be specific, obviously, to client needs. So somebody who might want to consider repurposing their career now that they have this change in their life, there's a specific tool that enables their thinking in that direction, right? For somebody else looking and saying, okay, they want to expand their career options because of this change as a young parent, there could be other tools we could use. There's something like a psychometric that would be useful, saying, what are you good at? How do you see your strengths? What can you combine? And what options might emerge from that? Right? So these
Mm.
as just two examples to give you that it is bespoke solutions, because I think it
Yeah.
starts with, and I believe it starts with, a belief that I have as a coach, that people have solutions within themselves. But what makes the difference is finding that person who can help you navigate and reach that solution.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, so doing it by yourself sometimes does not turn out the way you would expect it to be, because you're trying to find the question and you're trying to answer it. Whilst if you were to reflect this over, you benefit from the listening of another person from an unbiased place that then guides you to a deeper level of reflection and introspection, right? And that's where you start finding your answers.
Well, yes, I think you brought up a really interesting point that often we struggle alone, and it's not as if we don't know what the solution is in a sense. But like you said, having someone to reflect and share, and perhaps not even as a individual, sometimes there are different ways to do it, right? In groups, whether it's a, I don't know, reflection circle or support groups in the organization or in the community. I think, yeah, these are great places where you pull yourself into a situation outside of yourself and have to maybe visually or verbally confront like the kind of challenges and issues that are swirling in our heads, right? but not actually articulated. And I can see the true benefit from having someone professional like yourself actually do that. So yeah, thank you for really highlighting that. And yeah, as we kind of close out, what was one thing you would love listeners to take away from what you've shared in your story?
Okay. We've talked around this delicate topic about, balancing work, family needs, etc. So in my only leaving thoughts with our listeners is going to be that in this, as what I call an intricate dance of balancing work and family, your determination, your love, and your resilience are really your greatest assets, right? So, to navigate this journey, just three simple yet powerful steps that could be useful is to bear in mind, set up priorities to effectively manage your time. That's number one. Number two, stay determined because once you decided, you will find ways to make that happen. And third, seek support that aligns with your specific needs and goals. And always remember, you have the potential to thrive in both your professional and your personal life as a parent. Many have done it. You can, and you can even do better. So you've got this.
You've got this. All right.
Absolutely.
And if listeners want to connect with you, Vandana, what areas do you love talking about and learning from others?
I think as a coach and as an HR practitioner, I've always had this unwavering belief that every individual possesses the potential to achieve their goals. I'm passionate about discussing and enabling that journey, be it accelerating performance, chartering career moves, thriving in times of change, be it personal or professional, and cultivating potential for growth. I am always a learner myself because I think I continue to imbibe when I listen and hear from others. So, if any of these topics resonate with our listeners, I would love to continue to have these empowering conversations.
I love how you ended with empowering conversations. That's what we need more of. Thank you so much, Vandana, for sharing your insights, and I'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Sarah. I definitely look forward to talk to you soon again.
Thank you for listening to Make It Work, where we uncover inspiring stories of modern working mamas in Asia who have redefined their careers whilst putting family first. Please help others discover the show by leaving a review and rating on wherever you get your podcast. And see you at the next episode of Make It Work.